Alright, so where was I? Ah, yes, okay. So I think I found the spot where I'm supposed to rescue the captives or hostages or whatever. So I found this shack that's guarded by some people, and inside of it there are people who look exactly like hostages. So I figure this was the easiest quest I've ever done. But as it turns out, the people inside the shack are actually the people who are supposed to point me in the direction of the actual hostages. So go figure, right? So I'm not necessarily going to do this for free. So I asked the guy if he'll join the Minutemen if I go on a mass murder rampage for him. It seems like the least he could do, right? But he doesn't even fully agree. No, he's too good for that.
Are you willing to join the Minutemen once I've dealt with those raiders?
We'll certainly give it a good long think. People have gotten used to not being able to count on you folks. That's not going to change overnight.
So he seems pretty entitled for, you know, a peasant settler, but okay, whatever. So, and now since I've wasted my time taking orders from settler number 134, I begin on the actual quest. So I start walking down these railroad tracks when suddenly some stuff happens. One thing I will say about Fallout 4 is that the combat is substantially better than any of the previous Fallout games. Like, for example, when you shoot an enemy, they actually fall down or react in some way. Like, we're truly in the golden age of gaming right now. Like, also, the enemies actually do damage. Like, if I had gotten hit enough times, I actually would have died. So that's amazing to me. I mean, no, seriously though, like, it's about time for stuff like that to be implemented. I mean, even better, VATS slows down time now instead of just pausing it. So, like, it seems that you can use VATS and still have a tiny bit of skill, like, at the same time. I mean, at least that's what it feels like. So, after I finish my near-death experience with, like, 17 ghouls, I continue on my quest, and, maybe the reason I was taking so much damage is because Yohannathan isn't really even wearing a shirt. He kind of just has, like, tattered cloths, but, oh well, you gotta make do with what you have, I guess. 10 minutes into my hike, civilization is discovered, except it's not really civilization, because there's literally no one living here, plus my render distance is on, like, -5. I don't know how to change that either. But, oh, except for some more ghouls. There are ghouls here. So far, ghouls outnumber the actual characters by something like 3 to 1. Luckily, Dogmeat and I devised a brilliant strategy in which, like, where he stands there in the middle of the dangerous situation, and I stand at a respectful distance and just fire bullets into the crowd. At one point, my 10mm pistol runs out of ammo, so I have to switch to another gun, which actually turned out to be way better, so that's good. After I finish slaughtering all the ghouls in, like, a 3-mile radius, I actually find the camp where I guess the hostages are. But it turns out that this isn't just, like, a small campsite like I was hoping. It's more like a giant military complex, or like a big factory. So I'm pretty sure Preston Garvey was intentionally sending me to my doom. That's really the only possible the facility is just massive. But before I know it, I'm engaged in a full-on firefight between myself and, like, 5 or 6 equally equipped raiders. Yohannathan is just about a master of firearms by now, though, so this should be no problem at all. But as it turns out, the raiders, who aren't even civilized enough to wear normal clothes, are somehow advanced enough to have a military-grade turret at their disposal. But, I mean, how bad can it be, right? I'm, like, barely 3 hours into the game. Well, to answer that, it was pretty bad, or maybe I'm just pretty bad, but it was probably pretty bad. I end up getting lit on fire, like, 3 times while trying to kill it. One good thing about Fallout 4, another good thing actually, is that food restores health. I mean, it actually restores health. Like in previous Fallout games, food would restore like 1/10 of 1% HP. Now it restores like a little more, like enough for it to actually be edible. Finally, I destroy the turret, and of course Dogmeat decides to stand literally 2 feet away from it while it's exploding, so he ends up getting injured. Naturally, I have to salvage all the potentially useful materials from the raiders. Yohannathan even gets his own shirt for once. I mean, well, it's not so much a shirt as it is a giant hunk of metal attached to his stomach on the front end, but it's something. It's something. Luckily, no matter how injured Dogmeat is, he can always become completely healed with 1 injection of a stim pack. Oh, but my murdering spree has just begun. I haven't even entered the facility until now. So, surely enough, here they are. Yohannathan's only been conscious for like 2 or 3 days, and he's already murdered like 25 people. He needs to get some sleep probably, but there's no time for that right now. He's in the heat of battle. The good thing about slaying the enemy is that at least it keeps the episode moderately interesting, or I like to think so anyway. But What I'm really interested in is that Bethesda actually differentiates between the aluminum cans and the tin cans in this game. Very nicely done, Bethesda. I would hate for there to only be one type of metal can represented in the Fallout universe. I feel like that would be a little unjustified. But also, I'm not even sure how this is remotely possible in the post-apocalyptic land, but in addition to having military-grade turret, the Raiders also have a fully functional elevator. And what's also interesting is that some of the Raiders are simply called Raiders, whereas other ones are classified as, quote, Raider scum. I guess there's some sort of hierarchy, even in Raider society. But, not only did the Raiders have one military-class turret, they also had two. They had two at their immediate disposal. Luckily, they put the second one in a terrible spot, so... But that didn't stop the dog from sitting right next to it while it exploded, so... Another stim pack down the drain, I guess. I walk into another room of this giant complex, and to my complete surprise, there are actually more enemies in there. I have virtually the same armor as them, and the same weapon as most of them, but somehow I deal around 325% more damage than they do. I'm not going to really ask any questions because there's about 60 more of them than there is of me. If Preston Garvey realistically believed that this was actually a possible mission, in the slightest, he was completely insane. As it turns out, there's actually a third military-grade turret in the basement. What's more, there was actually a note on the terminal requesting another one. These people are pretty advanced for Savage Raiders, am I right? Anyhow, I'm fumbling around, and I find another room with Raiders, so I engage them naturally. But this time, however, Fallout 4 decides it's actually going to it's just actually not going to cooperate at all, and it completely spazzes out. So we're only on episode 4, and this is the second time it's done something like this. But this time it's even worse than the first time, because when I Control-Alt-Delete, I get a black screen for like 8 minutes. Oh my gosh, here we are. We're actually getting to Task Manager, maybe? Just did Control-Alt-Delete and waited about 5 minutes. We're getting a blue screen. This is something. Bethesda, man. My mouse cursor showed up. Yes, all hope is not lost. We're back. Oh my gosh, that was close.